Ever feel like planning a theme park trip is like a second job these days? You're scrolling and scrolling through reviews online, just trying to figure out if a place is really worth the hype. Well, that's where we come in.
We've done all that heavy lifting for you, combing through a mountain of reviews all about this theme park to bring you the insights that really matter.
Think of this as your cheat sheet, to decide if this park deserves a spot on your must-visit list. And we're not just talking about whether the rides are fun or the food is good, are we? We're going way deeper than that.
We're looking for the WHY behind the reviews. What are those recurring themes, the underlying patterns, the things that really tell us what kind of experience you're really in for?
And get this, the overall sentiment from these reviews, surprisingly mixed. We've got like ecstatic families raving about their magical day.
And then we have folks saying, worst day ever. Would give it 0 stars if I could. Pretty dramatic contrast.
Right. Talk about a roller coaster of opinions. And right smack dab in the middle, we have those who found the experience just okay, which might be the most telling of all.
Exactly. In a lukewarm review often that points to like unmet expectations or a mismatch between what the park offers and what the visitor was actually hoping for.
So let's untangle this web of reviews, shall we? And see what we can learn. What are people consistently praising? Or should we say ranting about?
One thing that pops up again and again is the family-friendly atmosphere. Parents especially seem to really appreciate this park's dedication to catering to kids,
We even saw a comment about the park being like a giant playground designed by someone who actually understands children. Can you believe that?
which makes you wonder what exactly makes it family-friendly.
Hmm.
Looking closely at the reviews, it seems to be a combination of factors. Manageable wait times, which is a godsend for anyone with antsy kids, right?
Mm.
Paired with a good variety of rides specifically geared towards those younger visitors.
And let's not forget those magic words, reasonable prices.
Absolutely. Affordability is a huge EE plus for families, especially these days. So we're seeing a trend here. This park seems to be knocking it out of the park when it comes to that crucial family demographic.
And there's always that same intense focus on families. Could it be a double-edged sword?
How so?
Well, while plenty of families are singing the park's praises, there's another chorus of reviewers, those looking for a more adult-oriented experience, who felt a bit let down.
I see where you're going with this.
Right. We saw comments like, not enough for adults to do, and felt like I was stuck in a kid's world. So while the park might be a dream come true for families, seems like they might be missing a trick when it comes to attracting a wider range of visitor, right?
That's a good observation. And it speaks to a larger point about the importance of understanding a park's target audience. This park's strengths, that family-friendly atmosphere, the focus on younger visitors, those are also its weaknesses when it comes to appealing to a broader demographic.
It's like that old saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure, but for theme parks.
Exactly. And that's why just looking at overall star ratings can be so misleading. It's the nuances, the details within those reviews that truly paint the picture.
And speaking of details, let's talk about some of the less glowing feedback. Remember those worst day ever comments?
Hard to forget those. And unfortunately, a few recurring themes emerge on the negative side as well.
Hit us with the hard truths, what seems to be rubbing visitors the wrong way.
Well, the most frequent complaints, they all center around 3 key areas: overcrowding, staff behavior, and cleanliness.
The trifecta of theme park nightmares.
Indeed. And what's fascinating is that these issues seem to be interconnected, don't they?
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for us. How are these things linked? So, overcrowding, grumpy staff, and questionable cleanliness, that's a recipe for disaster, right? Or is there more to the story?
It's rarely that simple, is it? Several reviews mention long wait times, probably because of all the crowds, and let's be honest, that can make even the calmest person a little cranky.
Especially when you're baking in the hot sun and dreaming of that overpriced ice cream.
Exactly. And then if the staff is also stretched thin, trying to manage all these crowds, well, it's easy to see how the customer service might take a hit. Remember that comment about staff seeming overwhelmed?
It's like a domino effect. Overcrowding leads to stressed staff, which then impacts the visitor experience. Makes sense.
Precisely. It's a classic example of how those operational issues can snowball.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it doesn't end there, right? Several reviewers also pointed to a connection between the overcrowding and the cleanliness, or rather, the lack thereof.
Yeah, more people usually means more messes, and then if the park is short-staffed on top of that.
Exactly. It's a vicious cycle. Now, this isn't to excuse the poor management or the subpar conditions, but it does provide a little context, I guess, for those scathing worst day ever reviews, right?
Yeah. It's like the difference between a park, like having a fundamentally flawed design versus maybe just having a really, really bad day.
That's a great way to put it. And it highlights why it's so important to look beyond just individual reviews and consider that bigger picture.
Right. Yeah, so we've got families who are loving the affordability and those kid-friendly vibes, while others are feeling let down by the lack of adult attractions. And of course, we've got the overcrowding that's potentially contributing to a whole host of other issues. But amidst all of this, there are some really intriguing details kind of buried within all these reviews, those hidden gems and surprises that add another layer to the story.
Absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting. One unexpected detail that kept popping up was the water park.
Oh, yeah, the mysterious water park. It seemed like people either didn't know about it beforehand or went in with really low expectations, but the reviews were overwhelmingly positive.
Several reviewers called it the highlight of their visit. They were praising the variety of slides, how clean it was, interesting contrast, right? And even the reasonable food prices over there.
So, a potential win for those seeking a refreshing escape from the crowds, and maybe a slightly less, shall we say, chaotic dining experience.
Exactly. And it just reinforces the idea that a park's overall rating doesn't always tell the whole story. There might be those hidden gems just waiting to be discovered if you know where to look.
Like unearthing buried treasure, you just need the right map.
And speaking of maps, I'm curious about the layout of this park. Was there any mention of how easy or difficult it is to navigate?
Great question. Because a confusing layout can definitely dampen the fun, especially with those impatient little ones in tow. And interestingly, the reviews were actually pretty divided on this point.
Divided.
Yeah.
How so? Did some folks find it a breeze while others got lost in the theme park wilderness?
Precisely. Some reviewers found the park like really easy to navigate. They praised the signage, said it was clear, and that the layout was logical. But others described it as confusing and difficult to get around, especially when the park was crowded.
So potentially another area where overcrowding just exacerbates those existent issues. Exactly. It's almost as if this park is a tale of two completely different experiences. Like manageable and enjoyable when it's not overcrowded, but potentially, stressful and frustrating during those peak times.
It's like those choose your own adventure books, but for theme parks. And that brings us to, I think, a pretty crucial question. With all of these different factors in play, how do you decide if this park is the right fit for you?
That's where our deep dive comes full circle.
Yeah.
Because it's not about us telling you what to think. It's about equipping you with all the information to make that informed decision yourself, based on what your priorities and preferences are.
It's like we've given you a backstage pass to all the behind-the-scenes action before you even buy a ticket, right?
Exactly. Because knowing a park's strengths and weaknesses is key to deciding if it aligns with what you're really looking for in a theme park, right?
So for our grand finale, let's put it all together. Would we recommend this park? And if so, to WHO?
Well, based on the hundreds of reviews that we analyzed, this park seems like a really solid choice for those families with young children, especially those who are really prioritizing affordability and that kind of manageable pace. That combination of reasonable prices, kid-friendly rides, and generally shorter wait times, it seems to be a winning formula for that demographic.
But it's not just about, like, slapping a family-friendly label on it, is it? What we're seeing here is that this park's commitment to families, it really seems to go beyond those kind of superficial perks.
Exactly. Reviewers consistently praise the park's overall atmosphere, words like relaxed, welcoming, even enchanting popped up a lot when they were describing their family experience. So this suggests like a deeper understanding, I think, of what makes a park truly enjoyable for visitors with those younger children.
It's like they've cracked the code on creating a space where kids can actually be kids and parents, get this, can actually relax, which, let's be honest, that's no small feat these days.
Absolutely. But, and this is a big but, if you're someone who's seeking thrills and excitement that are more geared towards adults, or if you're a real foodie looking for those culinary adventures, this park might leave you feeling a little underwhelmed.
Yeah, we saw quite a few disappointed comments, folks who just felt like the park lacked a certain, I don't know, wow factor, particularly when it came to the rides and the dining options.
Right, and this circles back to the importance of that target audience. While this park seems to excel at catering to those families, it might be missing an opportunity to attract a wider demographic by diversifying its offerings a bit more.
It's like specializing in just one type of cuisine, right? You might be absolutely amazing at it, but you're probably not going to please absolutely everyone's palate.
That's a perfect analogy. And it highlights why it's so crucial to consider what your priorities are when you're planning any theme park visit, right?
Right. Don't just go by that overall star rating. Dive into those reviews, look for the nitty-gritty details, and then you'll see if the park's strengths really align with what you're hoping to experience.
Because ultimately, the best theme park, it's the one that best meets your individual needs and expectations.
Now, before we wrap up this theme park adventure, we've got one final thought-provoking question for you, our listeners. We've talked a lot about this park's efforts to create a family-friendly environment, but what about those concerns surrounding the petting zoo?
Right. Several reviewers mentioned feeling a little uneasy about the cleanliness and even the safety of that particular area. If you were the park manager, how would you address those concerns? Would you invest in renovations, revamp the animal enclosures, or maybe even consider replacing the petting zoo with a different attraction altogether?
It's definitely a complex issue, no easy answers, and it highlights the ongoing challenge, I think, of balancing that visitor feedback with those business decisions.
It's definitely something to ponder, you know? The next time you're strolling through AD&E's theme park, look around. Observe those choices that they made. Consider the perspectives of both the park operators and your fellow visitors.
Because every detail, every decision, it contributes to the overall story of the park, and that story unfolds a little differently for each and every visitor.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through the ups, downs, twists, and turns of these theme park reviews. We hope we've given you a new perspective on how to navigate this overwhelming world of online feedback and make more informed decisions about the experiences that matter most to you.
And remember, we're always up for a challenge, so if you got a mountain of information you need help decipher, and send it our way. We'll dive deep, connect the dots, and deliver you the insights that matter most. Until next time, happy exploring.